Why did the tourist's smile disappear when the guard raised his rifle slightly? No one noticed at first. The sun was high, the checkpoint loud with engines and footsteps, the air thick with sand and dust. Laughter from a family still echoed a few meters away. Cameras clicked. Souvenirs were clutched tight. But in that single moment the man's grin froze, faltered, then collapsed into silence. He didn't speak. He just stopped smiling. And she saw it. Sergeant Leila Rahman, 27, boots planted firm on dry gravel, her finger hovering near the trigger guard but not on it. She was the guard, the one the smile was aimed at, the one who had lifted her rifle no more than a breath, not even enough to be called a threat, just a reflex born from too many patrols, too many shadows that turned deadly. The tourists would forget this. By evening they would eat dinner in their hotel, upload photos with warm filters and laugh at how intense the border felt. But not him, and not her. The silence that lingered in his eyes would come back to her later, in the small hours when the wind pressed against the canvas of her tent, when her weapon leaned against her cot, when she tried not to think of home. Why had she raised the rifle? Why had his smile disappeared? The answer was heavier than both of them knew. She exhaled, steady, lowering the weapon. The officer beside her kept scanning IDs, pretending not to notice her hesitation. The line of people shuffled forward. The heat pressed down like judgment. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "It was just a reflex, wasn't it?" Leila had been on post for 8 hours straight. The checkpoint was routine, the kind of duty no one wanted but everyone took turns enduring. She hated routine. Routine made you careless. Careless got people killed. She shifted her stance, boots grinding against gravel, and forced her mind to sharpen. But her thoughts drifted back anyway. To him. To that disappearing smile. To the way it had reminded her of another face, years ago, younger, familiar, trusting. Her brother. She had lifted a weapon near him once too, without meaning to. That day her life had forked into a road she could never walk back from. No one here knew that story, and she wasn't about to tell it. Truck rattled forward, dust rose in swirls, clinging to sweat. The driver's eyes darted nervously, his knuckles pale on the wheel. Leila watched him, calm but alert. The checkpoint had seen more than just tourists. Weapons smuggled under tarps. Desperation disguised as trade. A suicide vest once strapped to a boy younger than her brother had been. She remembered the sound of that day more than the sight. The collective gasp, the ringing in her ears, the orders shouted over radio static. She had survived. The boy hadn't, and survival never felt clean. "Rahman," the officer muttered, snapping her back. She blinked. "Yes, sir." "Eyes open, you're drifting." She nodded, jaw tight. Drifting wasn't allowed, not here, not now. And yet her mind slipped again, against her will. Back to the briefing room months ago, when they had first told her she would be deployed here, to this place between borders, this land where history itself felt fragile. She remembered how no one had looked at her then, how their eyes had slid past her to the maps, the screens, the men. She was just another name on the roster. A woman in uniform, yes, but still overlooked. Invisible in plain sight. Until she was. Her first patrol here had changed that. The ambush, the dust storm, the decision she had made that saved her squad but haunted her still. They respected her after that. They followed her orders, but respect won in fire came at a price, and part of her wondered if it was worth paying. Now, at this checkpoint, the sun relentless above, the world balanced between strangers and suspicion, she felt the weight of that price pressing against her ribs. The tourist's smile returned briefly when he reached the end of the line, when the officer waved him through. He avoided looking at her again. She almost wished he had, almost wished he'd ask her why, because maybe then she could answer, or maybe not. She checked her watch, hours left. Her throat was dry, her eyes stung. But the mission didn't care about thirst or fatigue. The mission only cared about precision. One mistake and someone died. That was the math of this place. Still, beneath the layers of discipline, a question burned in her chest. When had she stopped being human and started being just a uniform with a weapon? The noise of the crowd rose again. A child laughed. A woman argued over paperwork. A dog barked in the distance. Life went on, noisy and messy and human, and she stood in the middle of it, silent, rifle steady, heart uncertain. Night fell slowly over the desert. Long shadows stretched across the checkpoint, turning barbed wire into black lines against gold. Floodlights hummed to life. The line thinned, the dust settled. Leila exhaled and rolled her shoulders, tension leaving only to return again. She didn't see the tourist again that night, but she felt his silence long after, and when her shift ended, when she finally sat alone on her cot, rifle leaning against the wall, she let the memory replay. His smile, her reflex, the moment between them that wasn't supposed to matter but did. Because she knew what others didn't. Because she remembered her brother. Because once, in a village far from here, she had aimed her rifle just a fraction too high, just a breath too quick, and everything had changed. And though no one else knew, though no one else carried it, she lived with the truth every day. The line between safety and tragedy was as thin as a raised barrel. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and pressed her palms into her face. The night was silent, but her mind was not. Sleep wouldn't come easy. It never did. Outside, the desert wind shifted, rattling loose canvas, whispering across barbed wire. It sounded almost like a voice, almost like memory itself, almost like her brother's laughter fading into silence. And she thought again of the tourist, disappearing smile. And she wondered, not for the first time, if all she was doing was teaching the world how to fear her. Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room buzzed with static, the hum of the old projector flickering light across maps pinned to the wall. Men leaned forward, elbows pressed into wood, voices low, steady. Orders were passed, routes marked, intel dissected. And yet, as she sat near the corner, pen idle in her hand, no one looked at her. Leila stared at the red lines drawn across the map, tracing supply corridors, suspected infiltration points, villages too close to insurgent movement. She listened to every word. She remembered every detail. But her presence was air, transparent, convenient to overlook. Until the commander's voice broke through. "Sergeant Rahman," he said suddenly, eyes shifting to her. "You'll take overwatch on this sector. You know the terrain." The table fell quiet, heads turned. "Yes, sir," she replied, calm, controlled. The silence that followed was louder than agreement. It wasn't distrust, not anymore. She'd proven herself enough times for that. It was something else, something unspoken, the discomfort of seeing her where they didn't expect her to be. She remembered her first deployment, the doubt in their eyes. Too young, too small, a woman, not built for this. She remembered swallowing the words, biting down on her pride until her jaw ached. She remembered the weight of her brother's photograph in her pocket, the silent vow she'd made. "I'll stand where you couldn't. I'll carry what you left behind." The mission briefing ended. Boots scraped against concrete as men filed out. She stayed behind, tracing the red ink with her eyes, committing every curve of the line to memory. Alone, she felt the silence press in again. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. That night she sat on the roof of the outpost, rifle resting across her knees. The desert stretched wide and endless. The stars glittered sharp like cold glass scattered across velvet. She could almost forget where she was. Almost. Her earpiece crackled, voices from the night shift, reports of movement, routine chatter. She closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. But memories broke through anyway. Her brother Karim, 17, with laughter too loud for the quiet streets they grew up on. He had wanted to be a pilot. He had wanted freedom. She had wanted safety. They argued the night before he left. He told her she didn't understand. She told him he was reckless. Neither of them said goodbye the way they should have. He never came back. The letter came weeks later. Accident, they said, training exercise gone wrong. She read the words until the ink blurred. She carried the letter folded in her breast pocket for years until sweat and time erased the edges. And still, she remembered the way her mother's face had broken without sound, the way her father's silence became permanent. Leila had enlisted not long after, not for glory, not for revenge, for something she couldn't name then but felt every day since, the need to hold ground where he could not, to endure in his place, to prove that their family had not been erased. Her rifle had become both shield and anchor. A voice in her earpiece pulled her back. Unidentified movement, grid 5, could be nothing. She raised her scope, slow, scanning the dark horizon. The desert was quiet, wind brushing sand across rock. Shadows shifted with the breeze, but something else moved too, not wind, not chance. She breathed steady, adjusted her sight. There two figures low, slipping between dunes, wrong side of the boundary, too deliberate to be civilians. Her finger brushed the trigger guard, but she didn't fire. Not yet. She whispered into the comms, calm. Two unknowns moving west, marking position. Static answered, then acknowledgement. She kept watching, her scope fixed. The figures moved closer, paused, then retreated, testing the boundary, measuring response. She knew the pattern. Insurgents probed like this often. Sometimes they returned hours later, sometimes days, sometimes not at all. Her breath slowed, her body remained still, her mind did not. What if they had crossed? What if she had to take the shot? Would their faces haunt her like the others? Would she imagine smiles disappearing, eyes widening, silence falling again? Her hands were steady, her heart was not. The figures melted back into the desert, gone. The night quieted once more, but unease stayed with her, thick as the heat. She lowered the rifle, staring at the sand where they had stood. She thought of the tourist again, of the way fear had erased joy from his face with a single motion of her weapon. Did he think she wanted to scare him? Did he think she was heartless? He would never know the truth, that she feared her own reflexes more than he ever could. The stars wheeled overhead. Hours passed. Her shift ended. She climbed down from the roof, muscles stiff, eyes burning. She returned to her cot and sat in the dark, back against the wall, fingers curled around the folded letter she still carried. Karim's name almost erased by time. She pressed the paper to her lips, silent. And she wondered if her brother would even recognize who she had become. The next morning, dust storms rolled across the horizon, choking the sun into a pale smear. The briefing was short. Intel said insurgents were moving weapons through abandoned villages not far from their post. Patrols were assigned. Checkpoints reinforced. Leila's name was called again. Overwatch, precision. The unblinking eye above the chaos. She nodded, accepted. She always accepted. But this time, when she caught her reflection in the dusty window before leaving, she paused. Her face was harder than she remembered. Lines cut by sun and wind. Eyes darker, heavier. She touched the glass as if to remind herself she was still flesh, still human beneath the uniform. Her team gathered their gear, boots laced, radios checked, laughter here and there forced and brittle. One of the younger soldiers, barely 20, sat silent, fumbling with his rifle strap. Leila watched him. His hands trembled just slightly. "You'll be fine," she said quietly, crouching beside him. He looked up, startled. "How do you know?" She hesitated. She could have given a technical answer, training, coverage, procedure. But instead she said, "Because fear means you'll pay attention, and paying attention means you'll survive." He nodded, not fully convinced, but he breathed steadier. She stood, adjusted her pack, and followed the squad out into the storm. The desert swallowed sound. Wind screamed against metal. Visibility shrank to meters. Every step forward was blind faith. Her boots sank into soft sand, her scarf whipped against her face. She kept her eyes narrowed, her weapon close, her senses straining. But inside, beneath the noise, she felt it again, that quiet, knowing question. How many more smiles would she erase before she remembered how to smile herself? Why did the radio go silent just when they needed it most? The patrol had been moving slow, every step swallowed by dust. The storm howled, erasing sky and horizon alike. Visibility fell to almost nothing. And then, with a crackle and hiss, the comms cut out. Leila froze. The world narrowed to grit against her skin and the muffled sound of boots pushing through sand. The squad leader tapped his earpiece, frustration written across his face. No signal, no contact. Out here, that meant they were deaf, blind, alone. Her rifle rested against her shoulder, scope useless in the storm. She adjusted her stance, squinting into the blur. Shapes shifted, shadows bent. Was that a figure, or just wind carving ghosts into the dunes? Her breath slowed, she scanned again. The young soldier from earlier, the one with trembling hands, walked just ahead of her now. His name was Malik, 20 years old. He kept glancing sideways at her, searching for reassurance without asking for it. She gave none, not with words, only with the steadiness of her movement, the way she never faltered, never looked lost. But inside, she felt the same fear he did. "Stay tight," the squad leader called, voice muffled against the storm. "We reached the ridge, we waited out." Leila nodded, though he couldn't see her. She lifted her scarf higher against her mouth, dust filling her lungs with every breath. They pushed forward one step, then another. Time blurred in the storm. Minutes felt like hours. Then a sound, faint, different from the wind, a metallic clatter. Her hand shot up, fist closed, the squad halted, weapons raised. Silence pressed in, thick, absolute. Then a cough, human too close. She raised her rifle, peering through the haze. A figure emerged, hunched, dragging something heavy. Another followed. Shapes became men. Men became armed silhouettes. She counted, 2, 3, 4, maybe more behind them, weapons slung, not tourists, not civilians. Her finger brushed the trigger guard, her breath stilled. But then she saw it strapped to their backs, wrapped in cloth. Long, narrow, unmistakable shapes, rifles, smuggled weapons, confirmed. The squad leader caught her eye, a single-hand signal, hold. They crouched low, the storm shrouding them in shifting curtains of sand. The smugglers moved past unaware, too close, too dangerous. Malik's breathing quickened beside her. She reached out just slightly, her gloved hand brushing his sleeve. A silent message, steady. The figures passed, vanished again into the storm. The squad remained still, hearts pounding in rhythm with the wind. Only when silence returned did the leader whisper, "We follow." They tracked the smugglers at a distance, careful, deliberate. Each footfall swallowed by sand. Each heartbeat louder than it should be. Leila kept her scope raised, even as grit stung her eyes. She caught glimpses, a hand adjusting a strap, a weapon glinting beneath fabric, the faint glow of a cigarette between cracked lips. She studied them as if they were already ghosts. Her mind drifted against her will to Karim again. Her brother had once smoked too, sneaking out behind their house, the bitter scent clinging to his clothes. Their father hated it. Leila had laughed at him then, called him reckless. Now, years later, she watched strangers smoke in the desert and felt only the ache of memory. The storm began to ease. The horizon slowly sharpened, and with it danger grew. Once the smugglers realized they were being shadowed, the chase would turn bloody. They reached the ridge. The squad hunkered low behind rocks, waiting for orders. Through thinning dust, Leila spotted the smugglers ahead, stopping near a cluster of ruined stone houses. Abandoned village, perfect cover, perfect ambush. Her earpiece crackled faintly, signal returning in bursts. Not enough for command to hear, enough only for fragments, static drowned words. The leader cursed under his breath. "We can't engage without confirmation." Leila's eyes never left her scope. "If they vanish into the ruins, we lose them." He hesitated, looked at her. "Your call, Rahman, overwatch." Her pulse jumped. Her call, she hated those words. They always came with ghosts. Through her scope she saw one smuggler glance back, scanning the ridge. His hand hovered near his weapon, a flicker of suspicion. Another spoke, gesturing toward the ruins. Decision made. They were going to ground. Leila's finger curled tighter against the trigger guard. She exhaled, slow, steady. One squeeze and it would begin. One choice and her squad would follow her lead. But then she saw something that froze her. Behind the smugglers near the ruins, a child, small, thin, watching from the doorway of a broken house, eyes wide, hands clutching a bundle of cloth. Her chest tightened. Karim's face flashed again, younger, laughing, then gone. She blinked hard, focus, but the child didn't vanish. He was real, standing where bullets would fly. Her voice caught in her throat. She lowered her rifle slightly, just enough. Her squad leader whispered sharply, "Target Rahman, do it." She shook her head, barely perceptible. "Civilian in the line." He swore under his breath. The smugglers moved faster now, disappearing into the ruins. The child darted inside too, swallowed by shadow. Leila's chance was gone. The squad leader cursed again, signaling retreat to cover. "We wait for orders, we don't shoot blind." They pulled back, hearts pounding, weapons still raised. The storm eased into silence. Only the ruins remained ahead, crouching like ancient bones against the sand. Leila lowered her rifle completely, hands steady though her pulse thundered. Malik looked at her, eyes wide, not in judgment, in relief. He had seen the child too, he understood. But she knew others would not. Back at the outpost, hours later, the debrief was tense. The squad leader reported sighting, location, lack of engagement. Command's response was clipped, cold. Opportunity missed, weapons likely dispersed. Leila said nothing. She kept her face still, her voice locked away. She had learned long ago that explaining yourself only made silence heavier. That night alone on her cot, she replayed it all again. The smuggler's shadows, the cigarette glow, the child's eyes, her finger on the trigger, the hesitation, the choice. And once again, her brother's voice fatting across memory. "You don't understand." Maybe he was right, maybe she never would. The desert outside was silent. The wind had stopped. The stars glimmered like distant promises. She pressed the letter to her chest again, her brother's name against her heartbeat, and whispered into the dark, "I couldn't." The silence answered back. Why did the first shot sound different from all the others? It cracked through the night like a blade splitting silence, not warning fire, not testing distance. This one carried weight, it carried intent. Leila's body moved before thought did, rifle raised, scope aligned, breath stilled. Her squad scattered for cover, boots pounding against sand and stone, shouts drowned by the sudden chorus of gunfire. The ruins ahead lit up with muzzle flashes, brief bursts like lightning tearing the dark. She pressed herself against rocks, scanning. Figures moved between broken walls. Shapes darted from shadow to shadow. She counted 3, 4, maybe 5 shooters, but there could be more, always more. Her earpiece hissed alive. The squad leader's voice, "Contact North Ruins, return fire, keep low." Static swallowed the rest. Leila steadied her scope, crosshairs on a flash of movement, finger tightening then stopping. She saw the face for a fraction of a second. Young, barely older than Malik. Maybe the same age Karim had been. Her chest clenched. She shifted aim, lowered by a fraction, and fired. The shot cracked. Stone splintered. Dust erupted. The figure stumbled back, not hit but forced into cover. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Another burst of fire answered, stone chips raining near her head. She ducked, pressing flat. Sand bit into her cheek. The smell of gunpowder mixed with dust. Every sound felt too close. Malik's voice shouted nearby, high-pitched with panic, "I can't see them." Leila snapped, calm but firm. "Listen for the flashes, not the shapes." He steadied, crouched low, rifle shaking less now. She saw him breathe in, breathe out. He fired toward a window where light flared. Not a hit, but pressure, enough to keep them down. Gunfire roared, then a scream. Not theirs, theirs. Leila whipped her scope toward the sound. One of her squad, Arif, crumpled behind low stone. His leg twisted, blood spreading dark across sand. His hands clutched at it, eyes wide with shock. He wasn't calling for help, just staring, gasping. The squad leader crawled toward him, bullets sparking against rock inches away. Stay down, stay down. Arif's mouth opened, no words, only ragged breath. Leila swallowed hard. Her hands trembled for a fraction of a second, then steadied again. She raised her rifle, sighted on the flash that had hit him, fired. This time, no hesitation. The figure dropped. The weapon clattered against stone. Silence from that window. Her breath caught. One down, too many left. Malik shouted again, voice cracking. They're moving left. Leila swung her scope. Two figures flanking, sliding between shadows. She exhaled, squeezed. One stumbled, not fatal but hit. The other ducked, firing blind in panic. She adjusted, fired again. Silence. The firefight pressed on. Minutes dragged like hours. Every shot felt personal. Every silence after heavier. Then quiet, sudden, unnatural. The ruins went still. No flashes, no movement, just whined again. The squad leader whispered hoarsely, "Hold positions, watch." They waited, hearts hammering, weapons raised. Then a sound, footsteps retreating, faint, scattered. They were pulling back, fading into the night. Leila kept her scope fixed, scanning long after the others had vanished. Her body refused to believe it was over. Her breath stayed sharp, her finger tense. But the ruins stayed silent. Only the wounded gasps of Arif filled the air now. The squad leader crawled to him, hands pressing into the wound. "Stay with me, Arif, stay with me." Blood seeped between his fingers. Arif's eyes rolled, unfocused. He whispered something too soft. Leila strained to hear, only caught fragments. Tell her I tried." Her chest tightened. She didn't know who he meant. A mother, a sister, someone waiting somewhere far from here, someone who would never see him again. The medic arrived, kit rattling, bandages pressed, morphine injected. The fight to hold life stretched into silence. Leila forced herself to keep watch, scope scanning. She couldn't let herself sink into the moment, not yet. Her role was overwatch, shield above, eyes unblinking. But her mind betrayed her anyway. She thought of Karim. What would he have whispered in his last moments? What words would she never hear because she wasn't there? Her hands tightened around the rifle. Her eyes burned, but no tears came. She didn't cry anymore. She hadn't in years. The squad leader finally barked, "Evac point, now move." They lifted Arif onto a stretcher, carrying him between them. Blood trailed behind, dark against pale sand. Malik stumbled once, nearly dropping his side, but Leila steadied him with one arm. His face was pale, jaw clenched, but he kept moving. They reached the extraction ridge. Radios crackled again, faint but clear enough. Coordinates confirmed. Helicopter inbound. Minutes stretched long again, each second heavy with waiting. Finally, the thrum of rotors broke the silence. Dust swirled. Wind hammered down. The bird descended, side door open, medics leaping out. Arif was loaded inside, his face pale, lips barely moving. Then gone, lifted into the sky. The squad stood silent, weapons still raised as the dust settled around them. No cheers, no relief, just silence. Leila lowered her rifle slowly. Her arms ached. Her chest ached worse. Back at the outpost, dawn was breaking. The debrief was short. Contact confirmed. Enemy repelled. Casualties noted. "Good work," command said, as if any of it was good. Leila sat on her cot hours later, boots still on, uniform streaked with dust and blood not hers. She stared at her hands, remembering every trigger squeeze, every face behind the scope, every silence that followed. Malik knocked once before stepping in, hesitation in his eyes. "You saved me out there," he said quietly. She shook her head. No, you saved yourself, you listened. He looked like he wanted to argue, then he just nodded, eyes dropping. Do you ever stop seeing their faces? Her throat tightened. She wanted to lie, wanted to tell him yes, it fades, it gets easier. But the letter in her pocket burned against her chest. No, she said softly, you don't. Malik nodded again. He seemed both comforted and broken by the answer. He left without another word. Leila leaned back, pressing her palms against her eyes. Darkness bloomed behind her lids, filled with the flashes of muzzle fire, with Karim's face, with Arif's whisper. She let the silence swallow her. And for the first time in months, she whispered aloud, not to anyone living but to her brother. I'm still here, still carrying it, still failing, still trying. The wind outside rattled the canvas. The desert whispered again. And she wondered, not for the first time, if survival was really the victory everyone claimed it to be. What is heavier, the silence of survival or the silence of the ones who did? Leila lay awake on her cot, long after the others had collapsed into exhausted sleep. The outpost hummed faintly, generators growling, radios murmuring, boots clattering on distant gravel. Yet inside her head only silence. A silence shaped like Arif's face, pale under helicopter light. A silence shaped like Karim, staring at her from memories she couldn't erase. She hadn't closed her eyes in hours. Every time she tried, muzzle flashes lit the dark behind her lids. Every time she breathed, the acrid tang of burned powder returned. A knock broke through, soft, hesitant. Malik. He stepped in, shadows under his eyes, uniform still streaked with dust. He looked younger than ever and older at the same time. Can't sleep, he asked. His voice was rough as if scraped raw. She didn't answer, just sat up, pulling her boots back on. Malik leaned against the wall, arms folded tight like he was holding himself together. They said Arif's alive, he whispered, barely but alive. The words should have brought relief. They didn't. Alive wasn't safe. Alive wasn't forever. Malik's jaw tightened. Why him, why not me? He's better than me, smarter, always kept me in check if someone had to. Stop. Leila's voice cracked sharper than she intended. He flinched, but she pressed on. Don't finish that sentence. It doesn't work like that. But you. It doesn't, she snapped, then forced herself to soften. You'll tear yourself apart thinking that way, I know. He studied her face, as if trying to read the parts she kept buried. Then he nodded once, though his eyes betrayed that he didn't believe her. When he left, the silence returned. Leila strapped on her vest, checked her rifle again though it hadn't been fired since the ambush. Ritual kept her steady. Routine kept her alive. By dawn, orders came down. The squad gathered in the briefing tent, the air thick with stale coffee and grief they pretended not to show. The commander stood at the map board, voice clipped, efficient. Last night's ambush wasn't random. Intelligence confirms coordinated movement. Scouts report comms traffic spiking in the Sector 2 clicks north of the ruins. Whoever we engaged wasn't operating alone. The map was scarred with ink, circles, arrows, dotted lines. Leila's eyes traced them, but her thoughts wandered. The faces she saw through her scope. The one she dropped without hesitation. The one she missed because she hesitated too long. The commander's voice cut through. Our objective is clear. We track their trail, locate staging areas, and disrupt further attacks. We move at dusk. The squad shifted uneasily. Dusk meant long shadows. Dusk meant ambushes in every ruin. Dusk meant ghosts. After the briefing, silence stretched again as they filed out. Nobody spoke of Arif. Nobody asked if he would make it. They carried his absence like another pack on their backs. Leila sat apart, cleaning her rifle, the rhythm steady, mechanical. Malik joined her quietly. He didn't say anything for a long time, just worked on his sidearm, hands trembling less now, more precise. Finally, he spoke. When you pulled that trigger, you didn't even blink. How? She paused, cloth frozen mid-wipe. The truth pressed against her ribs, that she had blinked just not on the outside, that every shot carved another scar inside her, that the cost was measured not in bodies but in nights without sleep. She didn't tell him any of that. "Training," she said flatly, "and the weight you carry after." He nodded slowly, as if he expected no other answer, but the question hung heavy between them, unanswered in all the ways that mattered. Dusk came fast. The desert cooled, shadows stretching like scars across the earth. The squad moved in silence, gear rattling softly, eyes scanning every ridge. Leila walked point overwatch, rifle sweeping slow arcs. Malik stayed close, his gaze sharper than days before. Fear hadn't left him, but it no longer ruled him. They reached the ruins north of the ambush site. Nothing but broken stone, wind cutting through hollow walls. Yet something felt wrong, too quiet. Even the birds were absent. Leila's skin prickled, her breath slowed. She scanned the horizon through her scope. Nothing, no flashes, no figures, just emptiness stretching infinite. Then she saw it. Tracks, faint, fresh, not animals, boots, leading deeper into the wasteland. She signaled with 2 fingers. The squad leader nodded. They followed, footsteps careful, spread wide. The trail wound through narrow gullies, the air heavy with waiting. Finally, the path opened into a shallow basin, stone walls rising high around it. And there, hidden among shadows, caches, crates half buried, tarps camouflaged with dust, weapons, ammunition, supplies, enough for weeks. Malik whispered, all mixing with dread, "They've been stockpiling, planning more." Leila crouched, fingers brushing markings on a crate. Foreign symbols, not local, not random, organized, funded. This wasn't just scattered fighters, this was networked. The squad leader called it in, voice low. "Command, confirm we've got staging materials. At least 6 crates, possibly more under cover." Static, then reply. "Copy, mark and hold, reinforcements inbound. Do not engage further." Do not engage. The words tasted bitter. Leila's trigger finger itched. She wanted to burn it all, scatter it to ash, end it now, but orders chained her still. They set charges for demolition once clearance was given. Time stretched thin. Shadows deepened. Leila kept her scope fixed outward, scanning ridges. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every stone shifting sounded like breath. Then movement, distant, too far for clear ID, figures watching from the ridge, not firing, just standing, silent silhouettes against fading light. Her heart thudded. She sighted one, crosshairs on the head, finger resting. The silence roared louder than any firefight. Malik whispered, "Why aren't they shooting?" Leila's breath fogged in the cooling air. "Because they already did. They're waiting for the next one." The charges detonated minutes later, thunder splitting the basin, fire consuming crates. Dust mushroomed into the sky. Echoes rolled across stone. When it cleared, the ridge was empty. No watchers remained. They pulled back under darkening skies, silence walking with them all the way home. That night back at the outpost, Leila sat again with her rifle across her lap. Malik nearby, staring at the dirt floor like it might open and swallow him. Finally, he spoke. "We'll never see all of them, will we?" "No," Leila said quietly, "we won't." "Then how do we win?" She had no answer, none that wouldn't break him further. The only sound was the wind, whispering through canvas walls, carrying with it the scent of smoke from burning weapons, and the promise of battles yet to come. Why did the generator stop humming? Leila sat cleaning her rifle when the silence hit her. The familiar throb of the outpost's generator, steady, constant, had faltered. For a second, nothing filled the night but desert wind brushing against canvas walls. Then a flicker. Lights dipped. Radios hissed with static. She froze, not from fear but recognition. Power cuts didn't happen without reason. Out here, silence meant something was already moving against them. "Stay sharp," she murmured, already rising. Malik, half asleep on his cot, jerked upright. What's gear now? Her tone left no room. By the time the siren wailed, she was already at the wall, rifle mounted on sandbags, scanning through night vision. Shapes stirred beyond the wire. Too many. Moving in formation. Coordinated. Then the first rocket hissed through the sky. Impact. Explosion ripped sand and stone, throwing guards from the wall. Shouts erupted. Chaos swallowed silence. Contact north wall. Voices fractured in panic. Boots pounded dirt. Radios cracked with overlapping calls. Leila steadied her breath, scope sweeping. Green glow lit shadows sprinting low, rifles flashing. She squeezed. One dropped. Another. Her shots were deliberate, economical. Every round chosen, every life weighed. Beside her, Malik struggled to load, hands fumbling. His face was pale, lips tight. He never fired at advancing silhouettes like this, dozens, maybe more. He looked at her, eyes wide, waiting for something. Permission, guidance, salvation. Breathe, she snapped, not unkindly. Settle, squeeze, not spray. He swallowed, exhaled shakily, aimed. His first shot cracked wide. His second found a chest. The silhouette folded. His hands trembled but steadied. Baptism by fire. The enemy pressed harder. Mortars thudded into dirt, rattling the ground. Dust filled the air, stinging eyes, coating lungs. Shrapnel sang against steel. Screams pierced the night. Leila moved positions, sighting through gaps, keeping her rhythm. Calm inside chaos. She spotted one hauling a launcher, shouted coordinates, cut him down before the tube ignited. Another crept too close to wire. One squeeze, silence. Still they came, relentless. The outpost's commander barked orders, trying to herd scattered defenders back into line. But comms sputtered, half-jammed by interference. Reinforcements were radioed, but replies broke in static. They were on their own. A blast shook the south barricade. Dust geysered upward. Breach. Fighters poured through, shouting, firing. The defense line buckled. Leila vaulted down from her perch, hitting the ground running. She found Malik crouched behind a crate, firing bursts, face streaked with grime. She grabbed his shoulder. "Stay with me." His nod was jerky, frantic, but he moved, he followed. They swept corridors between tents, smoke curling like serpents. A medic screamed for cover as he dragged a bleeding soldier. Grenades cracked, flinging sand into mouths, eyes. The air was a storm of fire and grit. Leila's rifle bucked against her shoulder, each shot chosen with brutal precision. But for every shadow she dropped, two more appeared. The enemy wasn't raiding, they were trying to erase the outpost entirely. By midnight, the ground was carpeted with bodies, friendly and not. Fires burned through supply stacks. Ammunition cooked off in bright, deadly bursts. The air reeked of cordite, sweat, and blood. Leila's squad regrouped at the central command tent, reduced in number, eyes hollow. The commander, blood streaking his temple, rasped orders. "We hold, reinforcements ETA unknown. No retreat, you hear me? No retreat." But Leila could see it in their faces. Retreat wasn't possible, not physically, not emotionally. Too many already gone, too much already lost. The next wave came harder. RPGs slamming walls, tracers slicing the dark like red lightning. The defenders clung to rubble, coughing, firing blind through dust clouds. At one point, Malik froze. His rifle jammed, bolt stuck. He cursed, panic surging. A fighter closed the distance, blade flashing. Malik's eyes went wide. Too slow, too late. Leila's rifle cracked. The fighter fell mid-stride, sand puffing under him. She grabbed Malik, shoved him against cover. "Focus, you want to live, focus." His chest heaved, breath ragged. Then he forced the bolt free, reloaded, snapped back into line. His first kill up close. His first near death. Something in his face hardened. A line crossed. Hours blurred, bullets, screams, silence between explosions. Leila stopped counting kills. She stopped feeling the recoil. She became rhythm, precision. The thin thread keeping Malik and the others from unraveling completely. When the horizon finally bled pale with dawn, the assault waned. Shadows retreated, melting back into desert. Sporadic shots cracked, then faded. Silence crept back, heavier than before. The outpost was unrecognizable, half the walls gutted, fires still smoldering, bodies covered in ponchos, lined neatly though no neatness could soften what they were. Leila sat against sandbags, rifle across her lap, chest heaving. Sweat carved streaks through dust on her face. Her hands trembled for the first time all night. Malik sank beside her, face blank. He stared at his hands, still shaking, still stained. Then he looked at her. His voice was hoarse. "Is this winning?" Leila didn't answer. She couldn't. Around them, medics worked wordlessly, pulling stretchers, whispering names. Commanders made clipped calls into broken radios. Survivors stared at nothing, haunted. The sun rose on silence thicker than smoke. They had held. Barely. But in the hollow of that dawn, victory felt like another word for survival. And survival felt too thin, too fragile, too costly. How many names can one person carry before they forget their own? Leila stood among the rows of bodies, canvas tarps pulled tight, tags fluttering faintly in the morning breeze. The outpost smelled of smoke and antiseptic, of blood already beginning to fade into dust. She bent, fingers brushing one tag, not Arif, not Malik's, but someone's son, someone's brother. She forced herself to remember the shape of his face before they covered it, forced herself not to let him vanish into anonymity. Every name carved deeper into her, every silence heavier. The commander's voice broke the stillness, sharp against the weight. "Command has confirmed. They want retaliation, immediate, before the enemy regroups." Around him, the survivors shifted uneasily, faces gaunt, eyes rimmed red but still standing, still breathing. Soldiers who had seen too much in one night now asked to see more. The commander's gaze swept them, stopped on Leila. "You'll take point. Sniper overwatch. Malik, you're with her." Leila didn't argue. Orders were air, you breathed them or you choked, but something inside her coiled. This wasn't just about disrupting a network anymore. This was retribution, and retribution was never clean. She found Malik later sitting on a shattered wall, rifle across his knees. His face was pale but his jaw set, movement slower, more deliberate. He looked up at her, eyes hollowed by the night. "So we're going back out." "Yes." "Good." His voice cracked on the word. Not joy, not vengeance, just necessity. For a while they sat in silence, watching smoke rise in thin streams from the wreckage. Then Malik asked, quietly, "Does it ever leave? The ones you see through the scope?" Leila didn't answer immediately. She thought of Karim, of the farmer she'd once mistaken for a fighter, the face that still came in dreams, of Arif, pale and broken, maybe dying still. "No," she said finally, "you just learn to carry them." Malik nodded, as if he'd expected nothing else, but his hands tightened around the rifle like it was the only thing keeping him tethered. By dusk, the squad was ready, fewer than before. Faces she didn't recognize had replaced the ones she missed. Reinforcements pulled in fast. Strangers with clean uniforms and sharp edges, untested by the night they had survived. They moved out under low sky, clouds heavy, wind dry and biting. The desert stretched endless, but every shadow seemed to move. Every ridge felt like a trap waiting to spring. Leila walked ahead, scanning through her scope. Malik close, steps measured, posture tighter now. No longer the rookie fumbling at his rifle, but not yet the stone-faced veteran she feared he might become. As night deepened, they paused in a ruined village, crumbling walls, roofs long collapsed, echoes of lives abandoned. The squad spread out, securing perimeters, checking corners. Leila chose a vantage on a broken balcony, glass crunching under her boots. Malik sat near her, chewing dry rations without appetite. His eyes traced the outlines of shattered doorways. "People lived here," he murmured. "Kids, families, and now. Now it's just stone," Leila said softly. But it wasn't always, that's the thing. Someone laughed here once, someone prayed, someone fought with their brother over stupid things. He shook his head, pressing his palms together. It's like ghosts everywhere. Leila didn't respond. She remembered Karim's laugh, sharp and reckless, echoing in her memory as if he were still alive. She remembered the kitchen table they once sat at, long before uniforms and rifles. Ghosts lived everywhere. He was right. Later, as the squad settled into uneasy rest, one of the older soldiers lit a cigarette, smoke curling pale in the darkness. He offered it around. Most refused. He took a long drag, eyes half-lidded, and said, "You know, I promised my wife I'd quit. Said I'd stop when I came home." "Why didn't you?" Malik asked. The soldier smiled faintly, bitterly. "Because I'm not home yet." The words hung heavy, smoke drifting upward, vanishing into the night. When dawn came, they moved again. Sand crunched under boots. The horizon bled red and gold, painting ruins in ghostlight. Leila kept her rifle steady, scanning ridges, gullies, walls, always searching, always expecting. By midday, they reached high ground overlooking a valley, and there it was, hidden but not enough. A camp, tents staked low, vehicles half camouflaged, antennae glinting faintly. Fighters moved like ants, organized, efficient. Leila's breath slowed. She counted. 24, maybe more. Too many for their reduced squad to take head-on. But this was the network's artery. Cut it here, maybe the body would bleed out. She whispered coordinates into the radio. Her finger rested on the trigger. Malik crouched beside her, peering through his scope. His voice was a whisper. "Do we wait?" Leila didn't answer immediately. Her heart thudded slow, steady. She could end one life right now, but one wasn't enough. Not tonight. Tonight required more. "Not yet," she murmured. The squad spread into position, circling the valley like wolves. The air grew heavy with anticipation. Every second stretched. The enemy still unaware, moving in their routines, laughing, arguing, cleaning weapons. Human in their small details. Dead men walking in their larger one. Leila's finger hovered, her breath stilled. Malik's eyes flicked to her, waiting for the signal. And in that suspended moment, silence wrapped them all, thicker than any gunfire. When it broke, it would break forever. Why do soldiers always remember the silence before the first shot more than the gunfire after? Leila lay prone on the ridge, cheek pressed to the stock, eye to the glass. The valley stretched below, alive with enemy movement. Fighters carried crates, adjusted radios, laughed at jokes too far away to hear. Life. Ordinary until it was. Her finger rested on the trigger. Breath steady. The squad around her waited, scattered into cover, rifles ready, nerves strung tight. Malik crouched closest, scope tracking her scope, his face taut with something between fear and resolve. All it would take was one shot. She exhaled, the rifle bucked. A fighter below crumpled, a crate spilling. Chaos erupted instantly, shouts, weapons grabbed, shadows scattering. The silence was broken. The valley became fire. Rounds cracked from every direction. Tracers sliced air. Dust geysered from the ground. The enemy scrambled, but Leila's squad had already dug in. They struck from the high ground, deliberate, vicious. Leila's scope danced from target to target. One down, two. A third. She didn't count anymore. She couldn't. Numbers blurred into rhythm. She worked the bolt, exhaled, squeezed, repeated. Malik fired beside her, not frantic, not frozen, precise. His shots were raw but steady. He didn't flinch when the first one fell. He didn't freeze when another crawled, bleeding. He had crossed the line and there was no going back. The enemy regrouped fast. Mortars angled up, rounds whistling, slamming into the ridge. Dirt rained down, choking lungs, blinding eyes. Leila barked orders, shifting positions, never staying still long enough for luck to catch her. The squad pushed down the ridge, closing distance, weaving between bursts of fire. Smoke grenades hissed, shrouding movement. Shapes flickered in and out of the haze. Every corner a death waiting. Leila pressed forward, rifle snapping up, dropping two shadows before they cleared their safeties. Malik covered her flank, fierce and desperate, his rifle cracking until the barrel steamed. They reached the first line of tents. Chaos inside, fighters scrambling, some half-dressed, others already down. Supplies toppled, crates cracking open to spill ammunition. Leila kicked one shut, swept corners, fired clean. "Charges," she called. The squad moved, planting explosives in the supply stacks. Every second stretched, every heartbeat a drum. Shouts grew louder outside. Incoming fire rattled through fabric walls. A grenade clattered near. Leila dove, dragging Malik down with her. The blast tore through canvas, shrapnel peppering the ground. Her ears rang. Malik groaned, blood streaking his cheek. Not deep, not fatal. She shoved him upright. "Keep moving." They broke out into the open again. Fighters converged from all sides. The squad tightened, backs against each other, fire lashing outward in desperate arcs. Leila's rifle emptied. She drew sidearm, firing into shadows rushing close. Then the sky split. The charges ignited. Fire ripped through the valley, crates shattering, vehicles engulfed. Thunder rolled, flames clawed at the night. The network's heart tore open, bleeding smoke and sparks. The squad pulled back under the cover of their own fire. Feet pounded dirt. Breath tore lungs. Bullets hissed past, chasing them into the dark. By the time they crested the ridge again, half the valley below was ablaze. Black smoke curled upward, glowing red from beneath. Shouts still echoed, but fainter, disoriented, broken. They had done it, the artery severed, the network crippled. But not without cost. Leila counted them as they regrouped, fewer again, always fewer, some missing faces replaced by silence. Malik collapsed onto the ground, chest heaving, rifle slipping from his grip. His hands shook. His eyes were wet, but not from smoke. "We did it," he whispered, almost to himself. Then, softer, "But I don't feel like we did." Leila sank beside him, body aching, ears still ringing. She looked at the valley, at the fire consuming all they had fought through. She thought of Karim, of Arif, of the farmer, of the nameless ones under tarps, of the ones who laughed once in villages now silent. Victory was a word that felt too heavy, too dishonest. Survival was closer, endurance truer, but neither filled the emptiness. The squad sat in silence, broken but breathing, eyes reflecting firelight. No cheers, no shouts, just the soft rustle of wind carrying smoke across the ridge. Malik's voice broke again, raw. "Why do we keep doing this?" Leila turned to him. Her throat tightened, but words came. "Because if we stop, it means they were right, and I can't let them be right." Malik nodded slowly, as if holding onto that thread was enough to keep him standing. Dawn crept again, bleeding light across scorched earth. The valley below still smoldered, black scars twisting upward. The squad rose, one by one, and began the long walk back, slower, fewer, heavier. Leila walked last, rifle slung, eyes on the horizon. Her steps dragged, but each one carried more than her weight. They carried names, faces, silences. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She didn't look back at the valley. The fire would burn itself out, but the silence would stay with her always.